If you were to tell people that Ereck Flowers was going to sign a 3-year, $30 million deal with the Dolphins, and Dolphins fans were going to be feeling actually pretty good about it, and they wouldn't be too concerned and actually kind of happy that they have a good player, most people wouldn't believe you. I mean, this is someone who was highly criticized for quite some time, kind of written off as a bust, when he left the Giants, but he actually played really well for Washington last season. He was drafted with the number 9 overall pick to play tackle. He had his pluses and his minuses, but at the end of the day, it kind of just really became apparent that he just wasn't a franchise left tackle. I think he probably got more hate than he deserved, but at the end of the day, he did eventually leave the Giants. He played a 1-year deal with the Redskins and played really well there at guard, and I think that him being a guard for the Miami Dolphins could work out really well. Let's talk about some of his pluses and some of his minuses. He's not a perfect player, but a very good offensive lineman, and, it's important to protect your line, especially when you get a young quarterback, which Miami might do with this draft. We'll start off with this play. It's a one-on-one matchup against that Dallas interior defender, and right after the ball is snapped, you notice that the Dallas player is going to do a pretty good job of getting hand placement here. Flowers tries to get his hands sort of on top like that, but it doesn't really work out too well. He doesn't have great hand placement at this point. I feel like it's like if you're moving a couch or something and you're holding on to it, but you don't have the best grip, but you can't really adjust your grip too much, but you kind of have to try to figure it out. That's kind of what Flowers is doing right here. And watch how he loses the hand contact, but is able to very quickly get it back. He gets the hand placement back. And at this point, I mean, this is just a great situation. And, if this was a situation where he was a tackle, well, then the other player would have probably gotten around him and gotten a strip sack fumble. Like, that's probably what would have happened. But in a situation like this, where since he's the guard, you don't have that much space to try to get around him, which allows Flowers to help, finish off this play, and there isn't able to be any real pressure from his perspective, at least. So that's what Flowers can do. He's not the best player. That wasn't the best play necessarily, but moving him to guard, it just takes that extra couple of steps away. You're now on a track as opposed to having unlimited field on one side. And really, I think that's what he needed, as he's a much better guard than he ever would be a tackle. He also showed some things that I didn't really see too much of when he wasn't playing for Washington, and that was he would legitimately dominate certain defenders. Like a play like this, it's a one-on-one matchup. It's going to be a running play, so his job is to just, move that player as far out of the way as possible. And watch how much he's going to move him. He just completely pushes him out of the way. I mean, he got manhandled right there. Granted, the play didn't work out too well, but that was not Flowers' fault. Flowers had a great block on that play, but, as we all know, football is a team sport, and sometimes an offensive lineman is going to have a highlight reel level block on a play that results in a loss of 2 yards. That's just the reality of the situation. This play is another very interesting one where what's going to happen is that it once again is going to be a one-on-one matchup. You'll see a lot of those, and what's going to happen is that Flowers is basically going to try to get his left arm onto that lower right-hand side of his assigned man's body, and then he gets his right arm on the left shoulder pad. That's what he's going to try to do here. It makes a lot of sense. The way he's going to do it is by simply just getting his arm that's supposed to get on the shoulder pad higher very quickly. So start low, get higher, and then he's doing the opposite with his other hand. That's the way he's going to try to get hand placement here, but it doesn't really work out as planned. His assigned man does a pretty good job of disrupting his, Flowers' hands. So at that point, Flowers, he has some hand placement, but he's flat-footed here, He doesn't have the hand placement that he wants. He can't really push off very well. And this is actually a really bad situation. I mean, this is not what you want to have happen, because really, it's not too difficult for a defensive lineman to just push you back here. Now, the bright side is that Flowers isn't going to get beaten any direction. The only way he's going to lose is if he gets pushed backwards, and so, it's not a great situation, but there is hope here. The hope is that Flowers can just hold on long enough that Keenum can eventually make a throw, and that's what's going to happen. He is just able to hold on. There was some pressure So it's like not a great situation from Flowers. I do think that Flowers, listen, when I say he's not a perfect player, I don't mean that in the sense that you might say a almost elite player isn't a perfect player. I'm not saying Trent Flowers isn't a perfect player the same way I say that Mike Evans isn't a perfect player. There's definite flaws in Flowers' game. One of those is a play like that. He's just a bit clunky sometimes, you know what I mean? Like, where sometimes he just doesn't have the hand placement that you want. Sometimes he just like trips over his own feet. He seems like he's not the best just natural athlete, which definitely does come into play. That's part of the reason why he hasn't lived up to that top 10 draft pick potential, even though he is still a pretty solid player. That's just part of it. But another thing that for Ereck Flowers, it's true. I mean, Giants fans will definitely tell you this. He leads the league in what are you doing plays. I mean, without a doubt. This play is a good example where what's going to happen is that there's going to be 4 defensive linemen on the play, which typically happens, and there's 5 offensive linemen on the play. Now, also worth noting, there is no tight end in the game. There is going to be a halfback who is chipping an edge rusher on the right side of the screen, but he'll quickly then run a route. So it's basically just pretty typical. 4 offensive linemen go out the block, the other 4 defensive linemen, and then for Flowers, who's right there, he blocks whoever he wants because, there's nobody lined up with him. So basically find somebody to hit. I think the obvious choice here is that when you look at a situation like this, I think at this point, you tell your tackle, hey, don't be afraid to get beat to the inside. I'll run over. We'll take away this edge rusher because at the end of the day, you have someone who's chipping on the other side of the field, and then all that has to happen is that your center and guard do a decent enough job. They can win their own one-on-one matchups, and you can be fine. That's just what I maybe would have done, but at the same time, Ereck Flowers, he's also thinking, well, wait a second, if I do that, that now means that my center is going to have a one-on-one matchup. I don't love that situation. I'm going to help him out instead. I don't hate that, but I do kind of hate how Flowers goes about this, where what's going to happen is that you look at how he barely touches that cowboy and then kind of runs over to the outside and then tries to run back, and he just didn't really do too much. Granted, this was a great play. Keenum got rid of the ball quickly. If he didn't, it probably would not have been as good of a situation, but it still probably would have been fine. I mean, they needed help on the left tackle position on that play, but really the reason why I have a problem with this is because what you notice, and I'll show this a couple times, is that Dallas had a twist going on with their 2 interior linemen changing positions, and the second that happened, you see that's when Flowers then try to move over for a second, which you don't want to do because it actually seems pretty clear that should be a twist right there, meaning that another situation is happening. And for a second, he basically gave his center not just a one-on-one matchup, but a one-on-one matchup where the center was completely surprised. And granted, he recovered nicely. He played very well, so give him some credit. But at the same time, that situation could have been avoided, but Flowers got completely fooled by really the most simple move in the book, which is just something that you don't want to see an offensive lineman doing. Again, the decision pre-snap, whatever you want to do, I mean, I have no real problems with either direction on that one. But at the same time, you have to be smarter than that. You have to not fall for a twist, especially when you're the extra offensive lineman. It's not that big of a deal because, I mean, you're just trying to help at that point. Not a great play, and he will make some head scratchers like that one. But at the same time, I do have to say, I think that Flowers, he can make some really good plays, and his footwork has drastically improved. I mean, a play like this, it's going to be a center and Flowers double teaming an interior lineman, and then Flowers will move up to block a linebacker. That's the way that this is going to work. And notice how right when the ball is snapped, Flowers does a pretty good job of getting himself into position here. And one thing that helps is that just the way this play was designed, it's looks like it's going to be a handoff to the left side and ends up being a running play to the middle of the field. So that gets Flowers in a bit of a better position. But watch how Flowers is able to just finish off that block, gets enough contact there. That's Leighton Vander Esch, a really fast player, but Flowers was still able to get himself in good position, partially because of the good play call, but also partially because he had the footwork to pull that kind of thing off, which, I'm not sure if I would have guessed that he would have the footwork to pull those types of plays off, but he did that and did it pretty decently for the Washington Redskins last season. So I do think that just on paper, is it a bit of an overpay? Yes, I think it is, but at the same time, it's not a crazy overpay. And as I say on every video I make about a guy who maybe got overpaid, is that listen, you have to give up assets either way if you're going to acquire talent. Either you're going to give up assets by trading for somebody where you then give up assets, you either draft somebody where you have to spend a draft pick, or in free agency you overpay for somebody, you have to give some more money. So, it's just a situation. I don't hate the move at all. They needed to improve the line. Now they can do that. Flowers is somebody who, listen, he knows how to play tackle. Like, that's not his natural position, but if there's an injury, you can move him around. There is some versatility there, which is nice. And, I think he's a good player. I don't think he's elite, but I think he's good. So, I like the move. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. And, of course, as always, thanks for watching.